Hello, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on the time you're watching this. First of all, I would like to introduce myself, and this is Edwin, and I'm going to be working with a strategy instruction, or in this case, explaining the importance of strategy instruction. Okay, and first of all, I wanna start by telling that this is very important because it's teaching students learning strategies, okay, which is actually called strategy instructions. It's very important because they develop their own. They start working by themselves. They develop or they discover their own learning, their own learning strategy. Okay, so then they might become a little bit autonomous. Okay, they might improve their learning process, and they could be also good learners. So that's one of the first, one of the most important things about this. So in this case, I would like to explain as well that strategy instruction is also related to motivation. When students are motivated, of course, they look for some other ways to learn, or they improve the way they learn. So in this case, learning strategies or strategy instructions also help students to overcome certain things, all right? Because as they are developing their own way, they are start, for example, taking some negative part off from their learning. For example, if we teach them how to learn, or how to apply their own learning strategy, students just overcome the limited capacity of processing. Okay, what does it mean? In this case, is that students sometimes process limited information, okay, simultaneously. When they are for example, in a classroom or in a session, they are just acquiring limited information. That the point of this is to acquire not just limited, as much information as we can. But when I say information, I don't mean when the teacher is talking, and student is just listening, taking notes, or applying his own learning strategy. No, the information, the positive part, the input. The point of this is that students get a lot of information talking about input, so they can then explain or express it like an output. Now I would like to also mention the positive parts of learning how to learn, basically. Okay, and in this case, they create their own strategy, and with these students, you don't need to be working with the same thing with all students. Because we already know that all students learn differently. So that's why it's pretty important to students to develop their own learning strategy, so they can work better on it. And also, there is something pretty important, okay, that the teacher has to be aware of. Okay, one of these things is the role of the teacher, because it's not gonna be just the person who's going to be in charge of the group. Okay, first of all, the teacher doesn't need to be like the part. What I want to explain is like the authority, but no, not in the same level as students, because sometimes it's important to have an adult figure in classroom. When they are young learners. Or what I mean is to keep a level of awareness. Being conscientious, and the teacher have to be a diagnostician. Okay, diagnostician. This means that teacher gotta identify what each student strategy is, and he also has to be researcher, because he has to look for more information for students. Okay, so he can have a better delivery in the classroom. You also have to be a coach, like a coach, because you have to motivate the students and enhance in that thing in order to learn their own strategy. Also, it's pretty important to mention if this teaching strategy is gonna be not limited, but what I mean is that it has to be implicit or explicit. So which implicit is when you don't need to go directly and teach the student what to do, okay, or what how to improve it, you know, or when you have to just say it and teach it like the thing as it is. So we have to pay attention on this part, because it's pretty important to develop, as I said before, if the instruction is gonna be implicit or explicit, okay? That I would say that it's, 50-50. Sometimes it is not necessary to say it, and sometimes it's pretty important to mention what the thing is. So I would like to mention about my proposal, because there is a certain activity that students could do in order to develop their own teaching strategy, their own learning strategy. The first one that is pretty useful is to give them a test to know what kind of learning style they have. Because, for example, if they are the type of student who learn through music, you can actually make something related to music, or even playing music in class, so they can acquire the knowledge. Or if students are the kinesthetics, you can play a lot of games, you can play a lot of physical movement in order to make them understand the class. That's the first one. Another proposal which is related to an activity is, for example, let me give you an example of learning verbs, because learning irregular verbs is something that we as teachers know that there is no like another way to learn them. I mean, yeah, it is practicing, working on them, okay, but to know if they are regular or irregular, or just if it's regular, how they change, they have to learn, they have to study, they have to, maybe not necessary, we as teachers have to look, we have to look for some different ways so students can learn. But one activity which is very useful, and this is just example, all right, just an example of an activity when students have to show, for example, let's create a project and a student have to do what they want, whatever they want. This is gonna be implicit by telling them, implicit, I'm looking for the strategy, but explicit by telling them that they can do whatever they want, okay? So students, the point of this is to make students discover their own strategy. Because, for example, if this girl here preferred writing or doing something creative with their hands, this is gonna be pretty useful. But there are also some other type of students that learn differently. For example, this kind of game. This can be designed by the teacher or just the students, and they can play. They can learn these verbs differently. Or, for example, this, which is a little bit more creative. But the point of this activity is to make students develop their own learning strategy. The point of this is to make students creative, so teachers can identify how students learn and how the strategy could be done. So once the students have designed their own project, for example, they just study or work on them, and once the teacher knows how students learn, they can motivate, enhance them, and tell them how to work more on it, how to reinforce that strategy so they can be a really good learner. And this is going to be pretty useful, because once they have their own learning strategy, or if the teacher has already worked with them about it, there's going to be like a successful class and a successful knowledge acquirement. So that's why it's very, very, very important in this case, this type of activity for students to develop their own job, their own project, because they are going to be showing the way they learn. So in this case, once students know how they're going to work, there's going to be a great outcome from them, because let's remember that the point of this is to make students good learners so they can manage the language properly. So this is the part that I wanted to explain, the importance of learning strategies, because that's the same point, to make our students understand the class, to make our students learn what this is about, and this is gonna be pretty useful. Also, the teacher have to work on it, because he have to look for some information, so he can help students to develop their own learning strategy. And by the end of this, there's gonna be a great final part, because they will learn as they are expected to. I mean, they will learn successfully. We would like to mention, if this learning strategy is going to be into the metacognitive strategies, because this kind of you gotta have something related to planning. All right, the same of directed attention, because we gotta be focusing, planning, and focusing on the student in their own, and the problem identification. What is this? To check or to analyze what is the main problem, okay, when students learn, or if they have a little bit trouble at learning. So once we identify, we can work on it. So there's also something important, that is a combination, okay, a combination of strategies, because it is not a question of success, or using a specific strategy. The point of this is to, take the best of a strategy and to apply. But this is not just one. You can take, or the student can take different pieces of strategies and implement them into their own learning. So once it is done, something like this, the students can analyze themselves to check what is like the best way they could learn, or what would be the best strategy to learn. As I said before, he can take the best parts, or not even take into the best part. He can apply different strategies to their own learning. Let's emphasize that the strategy is not just taking notes. It's identifying the best way to learn. Once, for example, I got a student who was learning an activity through music. When I said music, is singing. He was singing some verbs and vocabulary. So that's their own learning strategy. So actually, I designed an activity with music, and it actually worked. And I also had a student that she doesn't like kinesthetic activities. So when there's a game, she prefers not participating. But the point is to include everybody in the class. So I included her in a different way, not participating because she doesn't like it, and I want the student to enjoy the class. So she participated with me or with the class for different things. I remember that I gave her instructions about what she was going to do, while the other students were running with the activity because it was a kinesthetic activity. She was just standing up and giving some instructions. I actually told her to give some instructions and to monitor the activity. So she participated. She participated. The point of this is to design different activities for everyone in the class. And that's the point of teaching strategies, so students can learn just as they can, or just as they prepare. So that's the point of this, because they would learn by themselves. They will become autonomous, and successfully learning will come just in that case, or alone by themselves. So that's the end of this. Thank you very much for watching.